and welcome back to my channel. So what we're doing today is talking about imperialism and how it contributed to starting the tensions that led up to the First World War. I have already posted a video on the alliance system, which is another cause of the First World War. So if you'd like to check it out, it will be linked up in the card above and in the description below. So let's get started with it. First of all, what is imperialism and why was it so sought after? As in, what was so great and desirable about it that so many powers were after it? Well, imperialism is the policy of extending nations' authority by acquiring territories abroad and establishing economic and political control over said territories. Simply put, it is when a nation, let's use Great Britain, for instance, increases its influence by taking control of other countries or territories. It's not just entire countries, it can also be parts of countries. So why was this such a good look on a new country like, let's say, Germany? So the imperial power will be seen as having a stronger and more successful economy, as it will be able to exploit resources of the colonized nation. So what resources could these be? Resources like manpower, goods, and services. So we can see this in the case of France, who can benefit from having the colonies in North and West Africa. That is, for example, Morocco. As we talked about in the last video, France had lost Alsace-Lorraine during the Franco-Prussian War. And because Alsace-Lorraine was such an important industrial zone, they lost a lot of revenue from it because they wouldn't be able to produce coal, iron, steel, important things, especially during this industrial age of the world, thus putting a strain on France's economy, which is why countries like Morocco, whose agriculture benefited France, was desirable. They would have an advantage over trade, thus they can have several ports and trade routes to different parts of the world, thus saving up on taxes and other tariffs. So they would have less strain on the tariffs, as they themselves would benefit from these taxes that they would collect from shipments from other countries. So another point is that they would also have a military and political advantage, as the imperial nation would have access to multiple points to transport goods from the colonized country to their mainland. So this can be seen in the case where France had power over Morocco. I keep saying Morocco, but it's just because I want to emphasize that because it comes up later on. So when Germany showed interest in Morocco, which France controlled, the tensions led to the Moroccan crisis. But again, that's later. The race to see which country had the ability to control others turned this expansion to one based on competition for the title of superiority. This can be seen with Germany, which already has a powerful economy and military power. However, due to its ambitions, it desired to expand its empire to reach Great Britain's standards because of this kind of competition and superiority complex. So, we first of all got the motives of Germany and Austria-Hungary. Now, you might be wondering, where's Italy? Italy was there the last time. Italy has some colonies in Africa, and this was done with, let me just give you a little bit of context. So during the scramble for Africa, and this basically means that European powers were just rushing to get some territories in Africa, and this occurred in the 1870s upwards. So a lot of these other nations like Germany, Britain, France, and Italy got it on the hype. So Italy actually got some lands from this. They annexed Eritrea and Italian Somaliland, which is just a territory of Somalia.
Now back to the main point. Why isn't Italy part of this?
Well, Italy, although it already had those colonies from Africa, that was already before the 20th century had begun. So in the context of the start of the 20th century, Italy is not focused in acquiring colonies. It's mainly focused on aligning themselves with power that they think can make them seem stronger and can support them in case of any financial hardships such as war. This is why they allied with Germany and Austria-Hungary in the dual alliance, forming the Triple Entente. So right now they're not focused on colonization. They're just focused on trying to grow the economy. So Germany's motives are summarized in its Weltpolitik. This means world policy. And this followed the statement given by the rich Chancellor Bernhard von Bülow, who said, "We do not want to put anyone in the shade, but we demand a place for ourselves in the sun." And this basically means the following points. First of all, a strong navy. Overseas colonies would allow Germany to have strong and powerful navies in each of those colonies. So lots of navies, lots of power. Next up, we have a large empire. Having colonies meant that you were an empire, and Germany, having been a new country, they had a lot of ambitions, and thus wanted this empire. Like a little someone called Great Britain, they wanted influence in international affairs. More colonies means that Germany will be able to negotiate forcefully in international affairs. So this means that it's going to have a lot more say, because imagine, it's like Germany has 20 colonies, somebody like France has 2. Who do you think whatever international council is running at the time is going to listen to? It's going to listen to Germany because it has the most power and the most influence. So that's what they wanted. Next up, we have Austria-Hungary's motives. Now, Austria-Hungary, it already had an empire because it had 11 different nationalities. However, it was struggling to maintain all of them because Italians didn't like them, Serbians didn't like them, Russians in there didn't like them. These nationalities did not like him, did not like Austria-Hungary. So it already had an empire. However, it wanted a little bit more because threatened by Russia's interest in the Balkans, which we'll talk about later. Next up, we have the motives for imperialism for Great Britain, France, and Russia. So let's read the topic sentence. Great Britain. As a small island, Britain needed to control its ability to trade. This is the reason for Britain's superiority over the seas. So honestly, for decades, centuries really, Great Britain has been the queen, basically, of the seas because it had the strongest navy in the world. So this is because it was a small island, and as a small island, Great Britain needed to maintain contact with its colonies because it needed to control and have ability to trade with them in order to get their resources, manpower, goods, and services. You know what I mean? Everything comes back. So at this time, Britain's best option was through the seas because planes hadn't been improved and sophisticated. Thus, it had to ensure absolute superiority over them. That is, over the seas. For instance, an enemy shipping headed towards its colonies like India had to be monitored. Thus, when Germany declares its aims to surpass Great Britain's navy, Great Britain is extremely worried. Next up, we have France's motives. Now, France had the most colonies after Britain, but unlike Britain, it wasn't the strictest when it came to control. So, its inability to control efficiently its colonies in Asia led to them being very conscious of its remaining colonies. Therefore, France was spending a lot of money on trying to dissolve the crises in Asia. So, you'd think, can France just let go of these colonies? Well, because France had already lost Alsace-Lorraine, they could not risk damaging their reputation by losing any more colonies. So they had to prove that they were still powerful by trying their best to keep these colonies. This is a good factor to remember when the Morocco crisis comes up. Next up, we have Russia. So Russia wanted expansion in the mainland, specifically. Not overseas, forget about that. They wanted expansion in the mainland, specifically for economic purposes, because again, Russia was futile and underdeveloped. It couldn't care less about being superior or being in a competition. It just wanted to give its people food, really. So it wanted to expand in Manchuria in order to have ice-free ports, because remember, Russia is pretty up there in the poles. It's pretty up there, pretty close to the poles. So that's why they wanted to expand south. And they also wanted to expand into the Balkans to have ability to trade by sailing its ships to the Mediterranean Sea. This part right here is important because it actually comes up later on. So it's pretty good to remember. This will give them access to sail through the Straits of Gibraltar and then access the Atlantic Ocean. And this will give them the ability to trade freely all over the world, a very, very wide area, and thus keep up with the rest of Europe because it was extremely behind. And those are the reasons. So the Balkans are going to be important pretty soon. So as a bit of extra knowledge, the Balkans are located in the southeast Europe, and that's where we can find the Serbians we talked about in the last video, as well as Greece, Bulgaria, Montenegro, and Turkey. Of course, there are more, but these are the main ones you can focus on right now. Here's a picture of the Balkans. You see Russia and Austria-Hungary pretty close, so this next slide is the European powers and their empires. Here are the powers, and this is all the land that they own. Now, overseas, that is the empires that have colonies that aren't in Europe, we have Great Britain, who has the largest, because as you can see, Great Britain's population is 40.8 million. Then the population of its colonies is 390 million. So big difference. And this basically shows just how powerful Great Britain was at the time. And why Germany wanted to have that kind of power. Because as you can see, Germany is literally the smallest. I mean, even Russia. Russia itself at the time was an empire because Russia is not just Russia. We have Siberia, which is the largest. We have Kazakhstan. We had Ukraine, Belarus, Moldova, Finland, the Caucasus, and in there we have Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan. Sorry if I didn't say it right. We have Central Asia, which in there we have Kazakhstan and many more. Russia itself was just an empire. However, Russia hadn't expanded since 1894. They did not want to expand overseas. They wanted to expand in mainland Europe, and that's where we see they wanted to expand in the Balkans because of all the trade that was going on there. And then Austria-Hungary is the smallest, with itself is an empire again, but compared to Russia, it was not that big. And it too wanted to expand in the Balkans. So we have a lot of copycats over here, basically. And this is just another bit of information that you might find useful. Of course, we have ourselves a quiz, because what is life without questions? First of all, we have, why did Germany want colonies? Number 2, how many colonies did Britain have in Africa in 1905? Mention at least one. All of my local subscribers know exactly one of them. Number 3, how big was Russia's overseas empire? Which of the following is a French colony? Number 5, which of the following are not part of the Balkans? Now here you can select more than one. So answers to the quiz. Why did Germany want colonies? Germany would have more control and influence over political affairs. That's just one reason. Of course you can say the others, but that's up to you. How many colonies did Britain have in Africa in 1905? Mention one. Britain had 14 colonies in Africa, and Ghana/Gold Coast was a part of them. How big was Russia's overseas empire? Trick question! Russia does not have any overseas colonies. Which of the following is a French colony? We have Morocco. I keep saying it. Seriously. I just said it all over the video. Which of the following are not part of the Balkans? We have Austria-Hungary. It's close to it, but it's not part. And then we have Sweden. I mean, like, it's just so far away. It's literally in the ice. Next up, exam style questions. Number 1. Give one example of the reasons why colonies were important to the great powers. So this is an example of a reason. So give a reason. This is the reason. An example, which power could you say followed this reason? Put it in there. Don't explain it. Just say it. Then give one way imperialism or colonial rivalry, same thing, led to tensions amongst the great powers. So that's that. Now, let's answer the questions. These are the ways in which I answer the question. You have to do the same way I did. Here we go. France's rule over Morocco for its coal, iron, and agriculture is an example that shows that resources was an essential part of colonialism/imperialism. So the strive for resources, but we can see this was France. So next up we have give one way imperialism or colonial rivalry led to tensions amongst the great powers. The fear of being less powerful led to imperialism. This is why it turned into so many races that all involved around the number 1 position. So there's that. And this is my explanation. You don't have to say this, but this point can be seen in Germany, where it goes on races against Britain on naval battles, economic battles, and colonial battles. There you go. Oh my goodness, you made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much for watching, and this is me. This is a nugget. This is another. Bye, Goo!